Hey, I'm Travis, this is Brad, and we are with I Must Stand. I Must Stand is more than just a podcast or a YouTube video, it is a commitment. I Must Stand is a resolve to take the responsibility needed to keep both feet in the game moving towards the future worth living. We help people gain clarity on their aim and break the mindset that they are defined by the space between. The I Must Stand mindset is having a constant awareness of the times in one's life that they fall into patterns of victimhood and realizing that taking responsibility is the only way out. We provide transformational events, coaching, and this is for men, equipping them to take responsibility for faith, family, body, and business. So let's dive into it. Brad, what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about integration of all those pillars we just talked about.
Which are?
Your faith, your family, your body, or your business. Like,
right.
how do we make all those things come together to equal one life? How do we take them off the shelf? I have this shelf analogy. You've heard it in the past of, I'm going to put this part of my life on a shelf and this part of my life on this shelf. And we're going to talk today a little bit about how we take all those pieces off the shelf and put them into one life worth living. So
one person showing up.
Not
multiple different people.
Yeah,
we don't have work Brad.
There's not a work Brad, a bodybuilder Brad. Like
clearly that
doesn't exist. But that's, I got accused years ago when my wife and I were doing a little thing called separation. Of being a chameleon, and that hurt. Like, I don't think I saw what that truly was until much later.
Yeah. What did they mean by that? Did you clarify?
Yeah. So to clarify, she knew I showed up differently in different scenarios. She knew that there was a work version of Brad, a dad version of Brad, a husband version of Brad, a social, Brad out there. And she never really got to see all of them integrate together. I was really good at keeping pieces of my life compartmentalized, and we'll talk about payoffs, I'm sure, but there was payoffs for that.
Right.
There was reasons that I did that, but what I didn't see was the downfall in my own life, the carpet being slowly jerked out from underneath me because of the way I was showing up like that. So yeah. I'm sure you've got similar stories.
Yeah, it's interesting to, we talk about all these different pillars, right? And how we can authentically show up as the same person, and those are all integrated together. I struggled with that as well. My struggle was more out of a scarcity mindset than anything. I assumed that I was the only one that had to be in these different things, and it was always short on resources, not enough of me to go around. It was always a tension. It was a battle. It was a balance, like work, life. When am I going to get time to go to the gym? When am I, whatever it is, blaming other circumstances and involved plenty of blaming other things and making myself the victim inside of that. But recently having that turned into, like changing the way I relate to it as things at odd versus a life that my wife and I build together, and everything falls from that.
Sure.
If we are not on the same page, and when I say if we're not on the same page, if I've not invited her to even be on the page, like how many times have I taken contract work where I just said, yeah, like I'll go ahead and do it, and I didn't even talk with her about it.
Right.
Yeah, it like on the time where I'm away that night, if I'm away from my family that night, there's definitely a little bit more tension than we own the decision together. So it wasn't, I wasn't looking at her as a resource to help me, bring these things in together. I felt like I had to be work Travis as separate than, the Travis at home and all the same things that you expressed. So when you got that feedback that you were a chameleon, you said it was hurtful for you, but now we recognize, hey, there were some payoffs involved with it.
Yeah.
What were those payoffs for you?
Yeah, well, one of the initial payoffs that comes to mind is, when you're a one-man band, you run the ship. Like you're always on time. You're always getting to play the song to your own tune. Life is spinning in a way that feeds me and me alone.
Yeah.
And not giving my contribution of who I am back to my family, back to those around me, my church community, the community of like-minded individuals we've had the pleasure of working with, and not allowing those different parts of myself to come together and invite one another into each space. I was really like giving them a portion of myself, but not an authentic portion of myself, because that was a different version of myself than I truly was at my core. And you can feel that. It's an internal wrestle. I know I felt it.
Yeah. Why was that happening? Like, what were you getting out of doing that?
Yeah. Well, again, one man band, you get to selfishly come at life.
I don't have to consider other people.
I don't have to consider other people. This is my show. The world revolves around Brad Johnson. Not true. But that's the type of mentality that you have with those ways of being.
Yeah.
And the problem is that gets lonely after a while.
Sure.
You can keep that up for a while, and it's fun for a while. Like, we're all going to go through seasons of doing something similar to this. Even if you're consciously aware, I think we all are going to have seasons where we do this. But the goal here, through this conversation, through us talking, is to make us more aware of it on a daily basis, so that we don't fall into the patterns of, putting things into certain categories and merging them together so that we can become the best versions of ourselves. Because I truly believe that if we allow ourselves on every level to bring people into our world, then our world is just going to be that much more beautiful. Good friend of ours, Dan Tuccini, likes to say that our jobs as husbands, as fathers, we're supposed to order chaos and release beauty. It's a really poetic way of saying that we have all these facets and these things coming at us, and some of them are our own doing, some of them are other people's doing, but the way that we relate to those things and how we show up as a full, authentic version of ourselves is just that. Like, we have the choice of what type of thing that we want to emit out of our lives, and beauty. I can't say it any better than that.
No, it's very well said. And I think when I look at my payoffs, I know that we were talking about this earlier, and the way I said it was I was able to keep leverage. And you said it so much better. You said you can manipulate people in circumstances. Like, right, yes, because that's the payoff.
Yeah.
It's control. It's, if I keep work and I keep home separate, I get home, and when I don't want to take responsibility and be active and be a good husband and be present for my kids, like, I can be in my woe is me. And like, you just like, if you don't know how tough work is, I get to play up how tough work was.
Sure.
Right? Like, work just sucked today. Oh my gosh, it was just awful. This circumstance, blah. Like, it's controlling the way I can show up now.
Yeah.
And I just
and I'm sure she never like reaches for some of that, like, oh, tell me about it. What and it was horrible. You wouldn't want to know.
Right. Yeah, and like, that's the thing. It's this, like, if I can hold that card, it's a control thing, right? Like, when we are separate, then I have another excuse. I get to blame something else,
Sure.
opposed to just owning it. Like, even if the day at work was tough, it's like, why would it affect my ability to be with the things that I value the most in my life?
Right.
Right? Like my wife and my kids. Why should I allow that? Why would I give that power to control how I come home to them?
Sure.
And the other thing that is a payoff for it outside of the control is like, it's a little bit still control, is I control the narrative, even when like I want to look good. Like I can shape something I can garner sympathy if I want sympathy. Like, oh, today was a tough day. Like I just need headspace when I get home, right?
Right.
Or like, oh, this event happened and I did this and I get to talk up all my parts. I can be the hero if I want to.
Right.
And I can look as good as I want, or I can get as much sympathy as I want when I have them separate.
Sure.
And like to your point, it's a lonely spot to be because I'm just there by myself.
Yeah.
And and up until recently, I had not been doing this. One thing I have been doing recently has been inviting my wife into those conversations, into my work conversations, into conversations about I must stand, anything and everything she's a part of now. And the number one, like our relationship has benefited from that, as it would, like we're like more intimately connected.
Right.
But the immense value that she adds in the way that she helps me open up, like things that I don't see, she sees.
Right.
Like she's become an incredible resource to me as I've become willing to give up my need for control.
Right.
Like if exchanging control and looking good gives me like the like best kept secret weapon of all time in my wife, like and her insight into things, it's not even close. Like the cost of me, like
drop the veil.
Right. Drop the veil. I think through how many situations I've been in, you know, we've been married now 10 years. How many situations have I been in where I've drawn certain conclusions or I've made judgments without inviting her in to be a part of it? How much differently it would look if I would have just opened myself up, if I would have just dropped the need for the controller to look good.
Yeah.
Like how much did that rob me in those moments?
Yeah.
What were the costs for you?
Probably two of the biggest costs, which are also two of the things I think that lead us into the integration piece was it was costing me vulnerability, and it was also costing me I want to say bravery, like vulnerability and bravery. Like it was making me feel less than. There was parts of myself that I was abandoning to the ones I loved most, and I knew that.
Yeah.
So in hindsight, you know, and from what I've gathered up until this point, those two things, the vulnerability and the bravery, are the only two pieces that can actually welcome the integration piece.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the piece that drops the veil and picks up the sword. Mm-hmm. You know, you drop the act and you are willing to dive into the things that you didn't want to dive into.
Yeah.
And two, that can be like a really tough conversation, but it can also be a loving moment. Like bringing your kid to work to show them what you do someday. But you know, you've had this agenda of, oh, I've got so much to do, that your kid actually couldn't describe to their friends what their dad does for a living. Like, how sad is that?
Yeah.
You know, dropping that veil and picking up your sword can mean so many different things, but I think those are two things that it cost me. But it's also the two things that's allowed me to regain that integration piece.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, you said it very well. Like there is like when it comes to the cost, like in order to actualize the cost and no longer do the payoffs, like it's an internal work, right? Like I had to come to the realization that I was being extremely selfish. Like I was not living for other people. I could give lip service to it all day long.
Sure.
But my actions didn't say that I was living for other people.
Right.
Like I was not in service to the visions that I had for my life were not in service to, because I was so caught up in my woe is me, right?
Sure.
Like, oh, here are all these, and victimhood and the mentality I was carrying. It just like, you can't keep your eyes off yourself.
Right.
And
it's born out of selfishness.
Right, exactly. And the lack of integration comes in, and it's like, if you are watching or if you're listening and you feel like, man, I struggle with the work and home balance, and like gut check for a second, because this is what we've had to do, is ask yourself, like, how much of the struggle, like, how much are you making it about yourself?
Yeah.
Like, versus how much are you actually like, are you standing for the people that you love? Or are you committed to the causes that you say you are actually committed to? Like, are you standing for your family with those things? It sucks to say, like, yeah, I'm a selfish piece of crap. And I mean, it's just the reality of it.
But we all are.
We all are.
We all have those pieces. The awareness of those pieces is where we get change, we get
Right.
growth, we get the ability to have abundance in our marriages, in our finances, in our bodies. Like, whatever those pillars are for you, like, we have those defined, and I'm a stand. But whatever those pillars are for you, like, that's where it's at.
Yeah. And the reason it's so tough for us to admit that is because the things that we don't like, the things that we don't like about ourselves, or we don't want to admit about ourselves, like, we're judging them so harshly. We assume other people judge them as harshly as we do.
Sure.
And so, I mean, it is just like we put these defensive mechanisms. I mean, we are psychologically wired to avoid these things at all cost.
Yeah.
And so if you're willing to do the work and to jump in and just, like, man, there's fruit on the other side. Like, I look at how the past couple months have been with my wife and I in our marriage, and the way that now we approach even conversations with different contract work. Like, if an opportunity comes to me, or if something comes up for me, we sit down and we talk about it together.
Right.
Like, hey, do we want to take this on? It's not just me.
Yeah.
Like, we have a vision and a goal for our family, and it affects both of us. The contexts are different. Like, the game plans for either of us, like, we have the same goal, but our roles are different.
Right.
But if I'm going to be doing this, like, you're going to be doing this, are we together in this?
Yeah. And how can we make our worlds collide as much and as often as possible? I think back to our recent trip to Los Angeles, where we were doing some work with some coaching out there. And, my wife was obviously brought along for the ride. Your wife was brought along at the end we did a little celebration dinner.
Your wife was more than just brought along.
My wife
She was killing it.
She was killing it.
She's a certified coach at this point.
She is a coach.
She was a certified coach before she was certified.
Yeah.
Let's just be clear.
She's amazing. She really is. She's got the gift, and I pray she uses it more and more. But the integration piece, man, like, it's bringing them into your world and putting yourself into their world as much as possible, and dropping the selfishness.
Right.
It's so easy. That's all we want to do. This world is made for selfish people. Like, there's no lack of selfishness. You can get on the death scroll on TikTok, whatever this is. Like, we want to satisfy our dopamine levels at a rate that's probably never been seen before.
Yeah.
So it's really, really easy to get on that kick. But I'm going to encourage anybody who's listening to this, get off of it. Like, get off yourself and get onto something that feeds more than just your selfish desire. Integration is a huge piece. It's been a game changer for me. I know it has been for you through our conversations on screen and off screen. Yeah.
Let's talk about, so we've talked about it with family and with work, so our finances, or our business and our family. What about the spiritual integration? How does that play out for you?
If, everyone's got a different opinion on spirituality, personally, Christian. But, your spiritual self is the most intimate side of yourself. It's a portion of yourself that's typically reserved for you and your greater power, the Lord, Jesus Christ, for me personally. But if you don't allow those people into your life on those particular topics, you're holding out, like, some of the most sacred portions of yourself. So for me, like, being able to integrate my spirituality and my relationship with Jesus Christ into the relationships of those around me, whether it's, my friends, my family, my children, like, the integration of the spiritual piece is it's the cherry on top, but it's also the foundation. Like it's literally the piece that keeps everything moving in the same direction. You know, we're going to be talking more about aim and directionality for our lives, but without those fundamentals and the integration of those fundamentals, those other things crumble, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, your belief system, your worldview, I mean, it's at the core
It is.
of who you are. Everything flows from that, right? So when we talk about a spiritual integration, I have a hard time understanding when people are like, like I just kind of keep my faith to myself and like it, or like it's just me and my family. I think through even the freedom like that we have experienced, a lot of what we talk about with coaching and like the ability to transform, like that all to me is foundational in a Christian worldview. It's only made possible through the Christian worldview, like the freedom that we have, and so all of that flows like in an integrative piece for me. My family is structured the way it is. We live our lives the way we do because of our faith.
Yeah.
The way I show up and work. We were having this conversation the other day of like, you do all things as if unto the Lord. Like, am I showing up to work as if I'm doing it for the Lord?
Right.
Like, how does that play out in that? Even my fitness, like this is a touchy subject for most people, or it's like the easiest for people to ignore. Do I treat my body like as if it is for the Lord? Right. Like I am committed to doing that moving forward. I've not done the best job of that previously, but moving forward, I'm committed to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, the spiritual piece, it's like I would caution people who are listening or who are watching, like it's not just going to be a business thing. It's not just going to be a family thing. It's not just going to be, your fitness. Like all of that flows from the spiritual side as well.
Sure. And anytime I think that you start to feel like maybe it is just a business thing, or maybe it is just a family thing, I encourage you to, maybe get with your coach, maybe get with somebody who's willing to speak truth to you and see a different point of view. But I truly believe that right there is the selfish integration piece that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Like the second you start to think like, oh, this is just that, this is only a family thing. I deal with this in my family, but I can't let it out into my work world. That's you being selfish with what you have to offer.
Yeah.
You have something to offer. We all have something to offer.
Right.
And you compartmentalizing those pieces of your life is selfish. Somebody else needs what you have.
Yeah. And if we believe that like the worldview that we follow and like in what God has done for us in sending Jesus to die on the cross for us, giving us eternal salvation.
Yeah.
Right. If we believe that's truth, a literal, eternally changing truth, like wouldn't that need to show up in every aspect of our lives?
Yeah.
Like, shouldn't we care about how we communicate it? Shouldn't it be like literally just like the word oozing comes to mind, which is a gross word, but I think through like it should have a hard time being contained.
Yeah.
If you are in service to others, like it should have a hard time being contained.
Yeah. Once you master this integration piece, and I don't know that you'll ever 100% master it, and I don't know that it'll ever show up and you not have that selfish part come out. But once you realize how this integration piece works, man, like you cannot contain yourself in any arena, and you shouldn't. And everyone's going to get the authentic version of Travis, the authentic version of myself. Like they are going to get all of you and who you were designed to be.
Yeah. Which is very freeing, by the way.
Man.
Like if you have never experienced that, if you've always felt like you have to be reserved in some sort of capacity, depending on which area of life or which sphere, which pillar that you are in, I'm telling you, it is an exhausting deal. Like just show up as yourself, as the imperfect mess that you are, as we all are. We're trying to figure this crap out. We're trying to live like Jesus every day.
Yeah.
We're trying to, grow and become, the integrative piece for our families, for our business. for our bodies as well. So anything else that's burning on your heart you want to share?
And I just want to say, if you want to have effective leadership, integration is going to be a key part of that. The way you show up in life, the way you show up with your family or at work or for your company, if you own your own company, integration is going to be key. You cannot hide the person that's inside. You have to be the authentic version of yourself, because the second you hide from yourself, you're doing just that. You're hiding from yourself, and there's a hole that will persist. And people see it, and it bleeds out into your people, into your family, into your community, your coworkers, your employees. Had a great conversation before we closed. Had a great conversation with one of my leaders at our organization, talking about his role as general manager and the difference between leading and managing people. Managing being that you're putting people into a box and trying to make those people fit the needs of the organization, versus true leadership, which is encouraging people to become the most authentic versions of themselves within the organization, so that they can grow the organization in a way that you've never perceived possible. And that comes from encouraging the integration of that person into the organization and all the facets of their life. So yeah, integration is such a huge piece.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if you've been listening to this or watching this and you feel like, as we've been talking through, like, hey, I want to have or experience the integration that you're talking about, you feel like your life is segmented into the different areas, my encouragement to you is to check out our website, imuststand.com. You can DM us on Instagram, or you can leave a comment on YouTube, whatever it is, wherever you're interacting with this content. We want to help you. We are certified coaches to help you navigate that process. We've been doing the work as we are coached as well, and to be able to unravel some of the belief structures that we will form in some of these boxes that we place ourselves into. It's something that we're super passionate about. We also have events coming up in the year of 2024. We've got 4 transformational events, these weekend events called Wake Weekend, that are totally life-changing experiences, total game changer for you. It's something that'll help you take a next step in the integration piece as well. We would love to get you signed up for that, or get you signed up for coaching, something that we would love to help you with, because we're extremely passionate about this and helping you take your next step forward and taking responsibility, the ultimate responsibility for where you are in your life and how you show up in those areas. So until then, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.